Duane Samford is a very interesting guy. I mean, he has such it's a all field background, but I mean, starting with nothing and working his way up, it's just been amazing. I don't know if he's going to brag on himself or not. If he doesn't, Jim Teagan, I'll get up and brag on him a little bit more. But he's here with his wife today, and he's been married to her for 44 years, and he thinks it's going to work out. And love of his life and the best thing that ever happened to me, he says. 41 years in the oil and gas service business, currently president of Wildcat International. Grandfather to 5 wonderful grands, lifetime committee man for the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, volunteer for Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, Shoot for the Cure Committee. His greatest accomplishment, he says, is Sinners Saved by Grace. Please welcome Duane Samford.
Thank you, John. Thanks, John. I appreciate the acknowledgement. I guess you didn't get the second page of what I sent, because there was nothing about all my educational background and the degrees that I've been able to get over the years. And I say that in jest because you're looking at a guy that has got a total of 2 semesters at North Harris County College. And I didn't pass either one of those. So I say all that, and I'm not belittling. That's obviously one of my biggest regrets, that I didn't go and get a degree. Always had excuses, working oil fields, you know what it's like. But in the same token, I know it's not because of me. It's not because of my mathematical background, because of my ability to write, to articulate, to do anything like that. It's all by the grace of God. And I appreciate John acknowledging my wife, and if y'all would, I'm not in any trouble today, but if y'all would just give her a hand for being here, that might get me out of the next one. We were thinking, it was about 25 years ago, hadn't been going, the OCF hadn't been going very long here, but we were invited to come sing for OCF, and my wife and I did that, and hadn't heard from John since then to come back and sing. It's kind of, yeah, you and, we get invited to funerals, once-a-time events, weddings, one-time events. But seriously, my wife is my biggest supporter, my best friend. Married her when she was 2 days after her 18th birthday. So we were young, dumb, absolutely broke. Well, both of us came from really nothing, so being broke was never a problem. We just knew we were in love and we were ready to get married. And it's been a phenomenal 44 years, and I can't thank her enough. Talking about my greatest accomplishment, really, I think the Lord put it on my heart. I'm a sinner saved by grace. Greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And I might get a little emotional, and I apologize about that, but it really means a lot to me. But I saw a post the other day, and it said, "My deepest awareness of myself is that I am deeply loved by Jesus Christ, and I have done nothing to earn it or deserve it." That's me. It's saved by grace. And I got to tell you a little bit about my history. Both of my grandparents on my mother's dad, my dad's dad, they were both Pentecostal preachers. And my dad was a pastor for quite a while. So I raised in church, going to church Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, revivals, tent meetings, that whole thing. That was just part of our life. So you knew and you were taught about trusting in the Lord, believing in the Lord, asking Him for anything. When you're in trouble, reach out to the Lord. He's there for you. So that was always instilled in me. And I knew that was what it was about. One pastor, one of my mom's dad, he was a true pastor. He was the one that would build a church, and he was really took care of his flock. My dad's father, he was an evangelist. And if you know anything about evangelists, they're not good pastors. They will come into a church for a day or a week or 2 weeks, and they will beat that congregation up. They'll tell them they're all going to hell. You know, they don't care if you're sick or who's in the hospital or anything else. They come in there and tear you up, and then it's a pastor's responsibility to try to bring that, you know, put salve on the, but that was my grandfather. My dad never, or his brothers and sisters, they never went to the same school 2 years in a row. He was a church builder. He would build log cabin churches, and he would move he married my grandmother at 14 years old. She was 14. And he would build a church, get it going, and then move on. And I was talking about tent revivals. I just remember as a kid, they would set up a canvas tent. They would bring the sawdust and put it out on the grass, and you know, they'd run the extension cords out there, and the music was phenomenal. I mean, they had great music going, and I just remember as a kid the smells. A lot of memories of just smells of the canvas and of that fresh mulch on the ground, and just running up and down and enjoying, you know, playing in the dirt. But that's my history. That's what I grew up. So being around the Spirit of the Lord was very, very common. But one of the problems I didn't learn until later in life was what they were teaching back then. It wasn't by grace as much as it was by works. You know, the women, you know, they couldn't, you know, wear their hair down. They couldn't wear makeup at the time. You know, men could do basically what they wanted to, but everything was works. And I've been saved probably 350, 400 times because I was raised that really your salvation, your step into heaven was based on the last thing that you were doing. Honest to goodness, I remember going to Garden Oaks. We were in the Garden Oaks area, went to that theater there, Sound of Music. Got in the theater there and sat down and literally as a kid prayed that place wouldn't burn down while I was there. Because I knew if it did, I wasn't supposed to be there, that I would go straight to hell. And it was later on in my life, my dad was a great guy, great preacher, great salesman, super musician. But he had some issues between him and my mom. And they ended up getting divorced. I won't get into all that. But it was one trip we went to Kerrville to take my younger brother, to camp. And coming back, and he just started opening up about issues that he had. And it was trust issues. It was trust issues. My mother could be gone 15 minutes longer than he thought she should be at the grocery store. You know, he assumed that she was having an affair, and there would be a knockdown, drag out, and he'd pack his bags. And one trip, I actually jumped in the car when I knew he was packing his bags and was hiding in the back of the station wagon. It scared him to death when I came out of there. But that was in my spirit. That spirit was very common to me because I was raised in that spirit. Didn't know it was there, didn't know that spirit even existed. But he was telling me that his father, when we were coming back, he was telling me about the divorce. Never asked him about it, but he was telling me what had happened. And he said, it was my fault. He said, but in my mind, it was as real as it could be. And as he was telling me that, in my spirit, that was me with this precious gal here. Gone to church all her life, sweetest girl, you know, never cussed, never drank, never did anything. I don't know why she hung with me. But I had that same spirit. I'm kind of going off track of some of the things I want to talk about, but I want to explain it to you. There's certain things called generational curses. The Bible tells you it's not, you know, we're not fighting against flesh and blood, but against spiritualities in the heavenlies. When you're raised or you're around a certain spirit, or you grow up in that becomes, you don't feel that. Have you ever walked into a room or a place and it was, you know, maybe dark and you kind of the hair stood up on the back of your neck? That was a spirit that you weren't aware of. You don't know what it was there. I don't know if anybody's ever figured out why that happens. But to me, there is a spirit there that your spirit is not accustomed to. And that's something that we as Christians have to understand. You can go out and do what you want to, but you carry that spirit, you bring it home, and your children become accustomed to that spirit. They don't know it's there. They don't know what it's all about, but they're accustomed to it. But that's how it was. That's how I was raised. It was about works. And I want to talk about a miracle that I didn't find out till I was probably a teenager. The reason I'm even here today is my grandparents moved all the time. My grandmother was just a saint. She prayed 24 hours a day. And my dad, when he was a teenager, came down with polio. And I heard it from my uncle, and I went and asked my grandmother about it. And when it came from her mouth, I knew it was the truth. But they had him in the hospital, and it was back when there was no cure for polio. And his legs were bent back, and his arms were all curled up. And they just sent him home to pass away. And they were at home, and my grandmother was in there cooking dinner, and my uncle and my grandfather were there by the bedside just trying to, take care of him and give him what he needs. And then the grandmother walks in, and she tells my uncle, or my cousin, my uncle Steve, go get the big Bible. Back in the day, we always had the big Bibles in the living room. Go grab that Bible and bring it in here. Of course, Grandpa didn't. He said, I didn't want to say anything because it's a grieving mother. She's fixing to lose her son. So they went and grabbed the Bible and set it down. She goes, now you pick him up and you hold him over that Bible. And the prayer that she prayed, I'm not tight enough with God to pray it. I don't have the freedom. I'm not in tune with God as she was. But she told God, she goes, God, I've given you my life. We've moved every time that you've wanted us to move. We've built churches. We've told about your grace. We've told everybody about your healing power. And I'm asking you right now to heal my son. And if you choose not to heal my son, I'm going to go out and I'm going to apologize to everyone that I've ever told. I've never heard anybody bold enough to say that prayer. Before the end of the night, my dad wasn't laying in the bed. My uncle said his legs started straightening out while they were holding him over the Bible. Before the end of the evening, he was running around the house and eating. That's the power of prayer. Where is your limit? Would you be willing to say a prayer that strong? I wish I could. I wish I felt that I was strong enough that I could do that. But that was a miracle that was amazing. It was just absolutely amazing. No way other to put it. But I've used that with my kids and my grandkids. And of course, my grandkids, I don't know why we let our boys live as long as they did. But now that we've got grandkids, we're glad we kept them around. But I've got a grandson and precious kid, and I've used the time to pray about just things that would mean something to a kid. We were going to the lake one weekend, and the kids, the DVR and the DVD in the Tahoe wasn't working, and he really wanted to watch a movie going, and it really helps us too, right? It keeps them quiet. And so I couldn't figure out what to do. Went to Walmart, bought a disc cleaner. We tried everything. And he was pretty upset that we were fixing to leave without it. And I said, I tell you what, let's just pray. Let's just pray over it. Let's see what the Lord will do with that. I promise you, we got through saying that prayer. I pulled picked the disc, stuck it in there, and the silly thing started working. And I've told him, do you keep that in mind? There was one other example that we were out fishing. He loves to fish. And we were on a golf course where we live. And he threw his lure. I tied the lure. And about the third cast, it just spun off. So I didn't tie it right. And he was pretty upset. And I told him, and it was a still day. It was calm. I said, hey, you remember how you prayed about the CD? Yes, sir. I said, I want you to see if you can pray about that. No idea. Clueless. Hey, just pray about it. And I promise you, in about 10 minutes, the breeze started picking up, and it pulled that lure right up to the side of the bank. I say that is we limit God. We limit what God can do in our lives. Do you dream big enough? Do you ask big enough? to God for the things that you need. God has provided for me way beyond my ability and my means. He has blessed us way more than we should. Another thing I want to encourage you on, and it was told me several years ago. Somebody was telling me, hey, I got a sister and she's really sick. She's got cancer or whatever. Man, I'll say a prayer for you. Pray for her. And I was talking to a friend of ours, and she was telling me something. I said, I'll say a prayer for him. She goes, don't tell me you're going to pray for him if you're not going to pray for him. And it kind of took me back, like, what I'm supposed to say. I said, well, yeah, of course I'll pray. But what struck me, what the Lord put in my heart at that time, if you tell somebody you're going to pray for them, the best thing to do is as you're walking away, say a prayer. So at least you didn't lie about it. But I carried that on, and I've shared that with so many people. Don't just tell somebody you're going to pray for them, pray for them. But the Lord impressed with me with my phone. I've got a whole list of family. I meet people. I'm like my dad. I meet strangers everywhere. I got a guy in my Rolodex on the healing portion of. I met him at a Lowe's. We were up at the lake, and he was standing there, had a breathing machine on, and he walked by, and I started talking to him. Yeah, my wife's got Alzheimer's, and she can't get out. And I told him, I'm going to pray for you. So he's listed in my healing section as Lowe's man and his wife. Guy at a little Mexican food restaurant by our house. Lady comes in. I strike up a conversation. She's waiting on an order to go. And she goes, yeah, I'm just got to get my husband. He's in terminal cancer, and this is what he really likes to do. I said, well, give me his name. And she gave me his name, and I put that in my phone. I don't know what it is. I just know, hey, I'm praying for Mike, total healing, the guy from the Mexican food place. But I say that has built me up so much, because every day reading the Word, you got to take your time reading your Word. If it's only one chapter a day, you're way ahead. Find the time. I find it in the morning is a perfect time to do those things before the day gets started, but to reach out and to touch someone. And I'll touch on a one that's really important, tithing. Grew up knowing that you gave 10% to the Lord, didn't know why, but that was a command that you do. And my wife and I have been faithful with tithe. Early on, when times were tough, the tithe was in the hat. It didn't always get pulled out when it needed to be pulled out of there. But we learned that the important thing is if we truly believe while we're doing it, we trust the Lord with our eternal salvation. Just simply asking him, Lord, would you forgive me? Forgive me of my sins. We believe that when he comes again, he'll take us to heaven. But we don't believe when he tells us to tithe that he's going to help us in those times. And God will put you through difficult times to teach you, just like in football. Guys that play football or sports or volleyball, whatever the case might be, when you go out for training, they put you through it, right? They wear you out. Going in the military, great example. They put you through stuff that you might never have to go through, but they're preparing you to be ready in case you do. I mean, that's just part of the training, right? We'd been working at Smith at 5 years, I guess. And bad time, it was about 86, 87. Had to lay off probably 20 people. And then the day came, they calls me in and, hey, it's your turn. And, no problem, whatever. And back in those days, we had two young boys and no money. I mean, there was never enough paycheck to go all the way. So, Elaine was finagling the bills around and trying to make things happen. But I'd been putting in my 401k, whatever that smallest percentage you could do, it must have been 0.5 or 1%. I just stuck that in there, And at the end of the day, there was $20,000. When I got laid off, there was $20,000, and I'll never forget the number. And, once the shock of being laid off, I always thought the toughest part of the job was laying people off until I got laid off. Then I found out it was a little bit worse than being on the other side of the table. But that was my comfort. That was the comfort that I had, is that $20,000. No idea how long that was going to last us. And then, of course, going down and through the unemployment line and the humiliation, everything else you go through that. When I came back home, I told Elaine, I said, we're going to pay tithe on this unemployment check. You know, we have to do that. If we believe, we have to do that. And I don't remember what that number was. It was, you know, a few $100 a month, some kind of deal. And we would write that tithe. And I, you know, having finances and trying to figure things out, I worried about it a lot. But I went back to work, I don't know, 5-6 months later back at Smith, and never had to touch the 401k. Everything was there. And actually, when I went back to work and got my full paycheck back, we were back to struggling paying bills. Now, you figure that one out. All I can tell you, it was obedience. It's obedience. And I know people, even my boys, have a little bit of trouble from the tithing perspective because pastors are always asking for tithing. God will tell you where to put your tithe. But if you're going to a church and you're getting ministered to there, then that's where your tithe should go. It'd be like going to a restaurant and eating dinner there, and they bring you a bill and say, no, I'm going to take this over down the street to that other restaurant. They're struggling. They really need to have that money. Give to the Lord, and you don't have to worry about finances. We quit worrying about finances years ago when we didn't have any money, and the Lord has provided over and over and over again. The last thing I want to talk about is it's a story that you've heard over and over and over again. And I know there's people, and I doubt in this group of people here we have people like this, but there's people that believe that there's nothing, that what they've done, whatever it is that they've done in their life, they can never be forgiven for it. And here a few years ago, my wife and I, we led worship in 2 different churches for several years. And our pastor got sick. And if I was leading worship and I felt the need to speak, I could speak for 25, 30 minutes. I mean, I could ruin the time. But to be able to actually prepare, I was still worked through the whole time, to put a message together was the hardest thing in the world. I just didn't know. My uncle, which was our pastor, he could go to Walmart for 30 minutes one week, and he could come back and he could speak on that for about 3 weeks. You know, I mean, he could, just one incident he could talk about and, you know, have a great sermon. And it was so difficult. And I'd told the Lord years ago, just being raised in pastors, and my uncle was telling me that my grandfather, that one of the people in his church came by one night, and they said, Pastor, we've got all this meat we had in our freezer. We're afraid it's freezer burnt. We don't want to eat it, but we want to give it to you. And, you know, that's that sort of deal. And then there's the people, you know, everybody's got a cousin or an uncles and stepsisters, somebody, you know, they got drunk and had a wreck and they want you to go to the hospital and pray for them. And I've got compassion more today than I used to, but I would go in there and just, you know, what did you expect was going to happen? I mean, really, what did you expect going to happen? That's it. And I told the Lord, I said, Lord, if you will keep me from being a pastor, I will tithe. I will tithe whatever you want me to do. Just do not, I don't want to be that guy. I've got compassion, but I'm not a pastor. Let me put it that way. But going on to talking about one of the greatest men in the Bible, King David. And this struck me here. You know, I've read the Bible several times over, and at different times, it depends on what state I'm in, where I'm at emotionally, spiritually, whatever, something will jump out of that passage that I've never seen before. And I've read the story about King David, about being the apple of God's eye. You know, he was absolutely, you know, God, he was the greatest, right? And God blessed him over throughout his career. And then one instant, that's in the Bible, there might have been other ones, but the only one that's written in the Bible was when they're at war. And he walks out on this palace balcony, and he looks down. There's a lady bathing on the rooftop. And I'm pretty sure she probably thought that somebody above her would be able to see her bathing. So Bathsheba was bathing there. Of course, you know the story. David went and he summoned her over, ended up having an affair with her. She got pregnant. That was bad enough. I mean, that's a difficult thing to do. But then what does David do? He does what a lot of people do when they're in a pickle. Well, I'm going to fix this. So he sends his messengers out to pull Uriah, one of his leading men on the front lines, and to bring him back. And he just, on the guise that I want to know how is the battle going. And when he gets him back there, he gets it, and he says, look, this is his plan. I want you to go, you've been out there, I want you to go home and spend the night with your wife and enjoy it. Just hoping the thing would happen and that he could cover up the fact that she's pregnant with his child. Next morning, he woke up and found out that Uriah didn't feel like it was right for him to go sleep with his wife when all his men were out there in the field battling. So he slept in the servants' quarters. So that kind of put a kink in old David's story there. So he told him to stay an extra night. Well, he did it the second night over. If you read the Bible, it tells him David had one other option. Either tell the guy, he had two. He could tell him, look, this is what happened. But David didn't do that. He sent him off to war. And he told his commander, when he gets there, you push him out to the front of the battle lines, to where he could be mortally, and he was killed. And then David, but the thing that touched me was talking about the mourning that David had because this child, this baby that was born from Bathsheba. And he prayed. They said he would stay on the floor for days in sackcloth, whatever. I'm not sure exactly what all that means. But he wouldn't get up. He wouldn't eat. He wouldn't do any of those things. He mourned. And they were worried about him. This is their king, right? And then one day the baby dies. And they walk in and he hears a murmuring. And he asks, is the child dead? They said, yes, he's dead. He's passed away. Immediately, David got up. All of that sin is still there. All of those things that he had committed were already there. He got up, went and bathed, got ready, and went and sat and ate. Hadn't eaten the whole time during that. And the staff was confused. They said, when the baby was still alive, you mourn for that child. But now that baby's dead, now you get up and you bathe and you eat. What's that all about? He said, as long as that baby was here, still alive, I was petitioning to the Lord for that. Now, the only thing that I can do is make sure that I go see that son later in the future. No matter what you've done, and that's where I think a lot of people get hung. No matter what you've done in your life, no matter where you've been, it's not too big. Grace has covered you. That one sacrifice for all mankind, for all eternity, has been made. All you simply have, you can't earn it. You simply ask for it. It's totally free. You ask for it, and the Lord will give it to you. I want to thank you again, guys. I appreciate this group. I appreciate the commitment that people make to come out to this. And I'll be praying for you guys. I'll be praying for this good old oil field. And hopefully we'll see each other in 10 years and still hang around and do this again. But thanks again, John. Appreciate the invite. Jim, appreciate it. Thank you very much.